Every lesson so far in this module has been about how VDI works. This closing lesson of Module 1 is about what it costs, because the technically correct architecture that blows the budget doesn't ship. We'll cover the 4 real cost drivers behind any VDI deployment, how Windows and platform licensing actually works, density and sizing basics, and how to keep an on-premises versus cloud cost comparison honest. Every VDI or DAS deployment is paying for some mix of 4 things. Compute is the vCPUs and RAM behind every session host, scaling with concurrent, not total, users. Storage covers OS disks, golden images, and often the most underestimated line, profile container storage, which grows with both user count and per-user data. Egress and networking cost more than people expect once multimedia-heavy sessions or hybrid connectivity circuits enter the picture. And licensing is the category new engineers most often underestimate, because it doesn't show up on a compute pricing calculator the way vCPU hours do. Here's the rule that trips up people coming from traditional desktop IT. A physical Windows PC can be licensed per device, but accessing Windows Enterprise virtual desktops for corporate use requires the connecting user to hold a qualifying per-user entitlement. The most common paths are Microsoft 365 E3 or E5, or a standalone Windows Enterprise E3 or E5 subscription. Windows 365 bundles the required Windows, Intune, and Entra ID licensing directly into its own cloud PC subscription price. That same per-user entitlement is what unlocks FSLogix at no additional cost. It isn't sold separately, it's included with the same qualifying subscriptions, along with Azure Virtual Desktop access rights. The practical lesson before finalizing any host pool design: confirm every connecting user actually holds a qualifying license. Already having Microsoft 365 is not automatically the same as being licensed for VDI, because different M365 plans carry different entitlement rights. Citrix DOS and Omnissa Horizon both layer their own subscription licensing on top of, not instead of, the Windows per-user licensing and the underlying infrastructure cost. It's typically per user or per device, often tiered across feature additions that unlock things like advanced security or analytics. The formula to remember for any platform: infrastructure cost plus Windows per-user licensing plus platform subscription equals total cost. Skip any one of those 3 and your budget will blow up later. Once licensing is accounted for, the next question is how many users one session host can actually support well, and that's workload-driven, not a universal number. Task workers running a browser and light office apps allow higher density, more users sharing fewer vCPUs. Power users and developers doing heavy multitasking need lower density. GPU and graphics workloads like CAD or AI development often need close to a 1-to-1 ratio, bound by the GPU itself rather than the vCPU count. vCPU-to-user ratio is the number people quote first, but it's not the only constraint. RAM pressure under concurrent sessions often fails before CPU utilization looks alarming, showing up as sluggishness and paging. And logon storms, many users signing in around the same time, each mounting a profile container and launching apps, create a burst of storage read and write operations that a poorly sized storage tier simply cannot sustain. A sizing exercise that ignores RAM headroom and storage IOPS looks fine with 5 test users and falls over in production with 500. When someone asks whether it's cheaper to run VDI themselves or in the cloud, the honest answer requires counting the same categories on both sides. On-premises costs include hardware refresh cycles, power, cooling, data center space, and staff time to operate and patch, not just the sticker price of servers. Cloud costs include compute, storage, egress, and licensing at realistic utilization, not best-case list pricing. The honest framing is rarely that one side is always cheaper. It depends on utilization patterns, sunk investment, and how much operational risk the organization wants to own directly. That completes Module 1. You now have the vocabulary to distinguish VDI, RDS, Application Virtualization, and DAS, the universal architecture of broker, gateway, session hosts, golden images, and profile layer, a working knowledge of the display protocols and why Pico-IP is legacy in 2026, the persistent versus non-persistent trade-off and the profile tools that make it work, and now the cost, licensing, and sizing vocabulary to defend a design in a budget conversation. Module 2 takes this foundation and applies it to the specific 2026 platform landscape, Azure Virtual Desktop, Windows 365, Citrix DOS, and Omnissa Horizon, so you can recognize exactly where each vendor's product fits everything you've just learned.